Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is James working on the Balsa USA Smoothie build. Pretty far along. I have some work to do on it still, but I am getting closer. It's taken some time. So anyhow, thanks again for tagging along on this build. So in this video, I'm going to be attaching the landing gear, or at least making the mount for the landing gear. I'm not going to put the landing gear until after I get the plane finished, but I can get it prepared. Okay, so let's take a look at the landing gear that comes with the kit. So as the plan shows here, here is the main kind of mounting plate for the landing gear, which is a piece of plywood, I think about a 1/4 inch piece of plywood. And then there are two wire, kind of bent wire pieces that come together near the base or near the axle of the wheel to form sort of this triangular structure. So here are the two pieces. There's this one here. This one's got the short kind of piece on it, and this has got the long. This is the longer one here, is where the wheels would be attached. And then what happens is you put these together like this, and I'll show it on the plane in just a minute. And then you're supposed to take copper wire, and wrap this, and then solder it together, and that's what kind of keeps it together and keeps it strong. So let me show you this on the actual plane. Okay, so here's the fuselage, and I'm just going to kind of set them on here so you can get the picture of kind of what I was just talking about. So this guy would go on here. I don't know if I can press it in there or not. Yeah, I can. And this guy will go on here like this. And like I said, they come together sort of like that. Now, and then as mentioned, you wrap this little piece with copper wire and then solder it. So the instructions show that. Maybe you can see that here. Here's the wire kind of where it mounts. There's these little kind of hardware brackets that mount to the bottom of the plate there. And then they show the picture here. It's kind of hard to see, but it's a picture of the copper wire which gets wrapped around that and then soldered on there. All right, so this is fine. I guess personal preference, I just don't like the way it looks. And really, if I was stuck with this landing gear, I would use it, and I think I would be happy with it. But I was a little bit confused because what happens, well, if you look at the instructions, they show like a solid landing gear on the picture. And the same thing is for the picture on the website. It shows a solid landing gear. So I don't know kind of where this picture comes from, but this wire setup appears to be sort of like the kind of the original setup of the landing gear. And again, I don't think it's horrible, just personal preference. I'm just not totally cool with the way it looks. So I'm going to change this out to a different landing gear that I have, which is these two pieces right here. And these, this set of landing gear came off of my Great Planes Escapade 40, which is a 40 size, kind of basically the same size as this plane right here. And I had some videos and discussed this plane before. And actually, this is the engine, again, that I'm using on this plane, came off the Escapade 40 when I built that one. It was an ARF, but it crashed and so on and so forth. But I saved the landing gear, and I'm going to use these guys. I think I like these better, just the way they look. So these are going to be mounted on here like this. And like this. And I'm going to go with this setup here. And I'll save these wire gear, and if for some reason I want to change this one day or these things get tweaked or something, I'll have these to kind of as backups. But I'm going to go ahead and go with these. I may paint them just to kind of clean them up. So that's the main landing gear. Okay. So then for the tail gear, or the tail wheel assembly, they have another little system that this one I'm really not fond of. And what that is it's shown here, is a little plywood plate. And what you do is you take the plywood plate, and that's what this is, and you drill a couple holes in there for mounting the screw, then you drill it out for this wire. And they also give you this little tail wheel kind of pre-bent wire kind of bracket. And what happens is this guy will be like this, and this will be drilled into the rudder. So you make a little groove, as it's shown here, kind of like a little slot almost, and you drill this out and you just kind of plug that into the rudder. And then what would happen is you'd have this piece of plywood. Let me flip my plane around here. Okay. This piece of plywood would be on here like this, and then a little hole would be drilled in it like I just kind of showed you, and then it would go in there like that. Okay, hopefully that kind of makes sense. Now, I don't really like this because if you look at this, there's nothing that really supports the tail wheel other than the rudder itself. In fact, it's really you're relying on the hinges to support the tail wheel, because there's no connection on this little plywood plate that they give you. So this would just be sort of like free in here, and then all the stress or the weight of the tail kind of section, when it kind of, if you do kind of hit down on this, is going to push just straight down onto the rudder, or up to the rudder if you kind of have the plane oriented correctly, and it's going to put a lot of stress on the hinges, and it's going to put stress on the rudder itself. Now, you could probably kind of figure out a way to put like a little collar or something on here to kind of prevent it from going down. And I would do that if I had to use this and I was going to go with it. I would figure out some kind of way to help kind of retain this kind of assembly from kind of going down like I just mentioned. But anyhow, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to not use this, and I'm going to go with a tail gear or tail wheel assembly that I purchased, and I'm going to replace it with that. All right, so let me show you what I ordered, and it's in this box right here. I actually I bought my wheels also. So the plan calls for 2 1/4 inch wheels, and I went with actually a little bit bigger. I went with 2 1/2 inch wheels. Let me get this out of the way. Yeah, so here are my two. I just bought these low bounce Dubro wheels, and those will work just fine. Let me put these off to the side, and then here, hopefully, is my tail wheel bracket that I purchased. Now this is a Dubro tail wheel bracket for 40 size airplanes. I move this out of the way. And if you look on the plans, if I can move this, I don't know if you can kind of see way over there or not. I'll move this out of the way here without moving my camera around and everything. I don't know if you could pick it up. I'll zoom in on it. But you can actually see here on the plan themselves, they actually show a bracket that looks a lot like this one. It's kind of that triangular piece. They don't actually show this little piece of this little wood dude that they give you in the kit. So those are some things that I kind of noted about this kit as I build it, is some things aren't consistent with between the plans, the parts in the box, and some of the stuff in the instructions. So that's probably my only kind of criticism, if I call it that, of this kit so far, is that there seems to be sort of a disconnect between maybe different generations of plans, instructions, and parts. So, but overall you can kind of figure it out. All right, so real quick, going back to the tail wheel assembly, I'm going to use this, and I'm going to use this little, I don't know what size wheel this is. I think it's from my little grid here. That's a 1-inch wheel. I think this is a Sullivan. This is something I had in my stash of junk. So this is a nice little wheel. It's not foam, it's actual rubber, and it's pretty solid. So I'm going to be using this setup here. Now the thing about it is I'm not going to assemble this now, because it's going to go on after I cover the plane. So it's going to be one of the last things I do. So I'm just going to set this aside, and I've been kind of losing my stuff lately, so I got to make sure I keep track of everything here. Okay, so I'm going to take this little plate that they give you, and I'll put that back in the box down there, and I'll hang on to their little tail wheel bracket wire. All right, so here is, let's look at the landing gear now that I'm going to be using. And get this stuff out of the way. All right, so this is actually really nice landing gear that came with that Great Planes Escapade, and it came with these little. It has 2 collars to kind of retain the wheel on it right here, and it's got this real nice kind of sturdy kind of axle that will go on here like this. And I didn't have any problem with the landing gear. It was great on this plane, so I'm going to go ahead and use it again like I said. So this will go on here like this. If I can get it on there. I'm not going to put it on all the way. So that'll go on there like that, and that's how that's going to work. And then how I'm going to mount it is I'm going to use these 10 by 24 T-nuts. Those are going to be on the inside. And I'm going to be using some stainless steel bolts, 1024. And I'm going to use those obviously to mount this, to mount them. So that's my main, that's kind of like the hardware. I had some socket head guys that I really like, socket head screws or bolts like this, but these are just too long. They're gonna extend too far, and I didn't want to cut them, and I didn't want to go buy new ones. So I'm just gonna go ahead and use these kind of shorter ones. And I think I have some lock nuts or some lock washers too that I'll probably put on here. So that's the setup. All right, let me bring my plane back around here to the front part of it. And if you don't have one of these little airplane kind of stands, I highly recommend that. I don't know what brand this is, but you'll see them online. They're very easy to find, and they're really cool because they got these trays in them. You can put your stuff in there. So I'll just put my hardware in here right now, and let's go ahead and take a look at how I'm going to mount these on here. So let me pop this over here. Okay, so there's, again, just looking down inside, and I'm going to drill that. I'm going to drill the 4 holes out, and I'm going to put those T-nuts. I'm going to mount those T-nuts in here, and then, as I mentioned, bolt everything down on here like this. Okay, so what I need to do though is I need to find sort of the center point that I'm going to mount, that I'm going to line the landing gear up on. So if we go back and look at the diagram here, I'll show you what I've been thinking. Hold on a second. Okay, so let me show you what I did. So I already drew some stuff on here. So you can see that the wire, kind of the 2 landing gear pieces come together. They form like this triangle, and then the axle of the wheel would be like right about here. And I wanted to figure out sort of like where that wheel would be, its location perpendicular to the mounting plate. So what I did is, first thing I did is I drew a line that was parallel with the plywood, the bottom of the plywood bracket. You can kind of see this line that I drew on here, this red one. And then I took this protractor, this was a see-through brand kind of scale protractor, and I lined it up on here at 90 degrees in the direction of where the wheel is. And what I did is I took another ruler, just because this thing isn't long enough. I kind of took another ruler and I did this, and you can kind of see down here, I projected that line like that. Hopefully my hands are not in the way. So this is the axle right here, and I just projected that line up using the ruler and using the protractor, and I found that point right there on the plate. So if I put the wheel here, just as an example, if I put the wheel like right here, hopefully I got this kind of exactly where it would be, or close enough to be where it would be if I were using these kind of triangular pieces. And I'm assuming this is where I need to be just because it's the design of the airplane. So I just tried to kind of repeat that here. And that's the way I did it. I just drew these perpendicular lines to each other, this one and this one. And then I found this point, and then I measured from this groove over in 7/8 of an inch, and from this groove over to this way, it's 1 3/8. And between those 2 measurements, I can hopefully kind of find this on the plate on the airplane over here, and then we'll mark that line. Okay, so if I look at my measurement again, so it was 7/8 from the front one, which was like right about, if I can get this on here, I have a long ruler. 7/8 was about from the center of this one to right here, about right there, about 7/8. I drew it lightly. And then from the other side, it was 1 3/8. So to check it, you can kind of see here, it's 1 2 3/8, and that's 1. So yeah, right about there. So there's my line. Now what that means now is that the landing gear will be, or the landing gear will be set up right there, kind of perpendicular to that line right there. Okay, now using this line, as I mentioned, put that right here. I'll take my square and I'll draw that line across the plate itself. I'm going to go kind of light with it, like that. Okay, my square was a little bit loose when I did that other line, so I had to tighten it up. So right about here. Let's use my hand. Okay, so there's the center line of the landing gear where it's going to go. Okay, so now I'm going to find the center line kind of going down the axis of the fuselage. I think this is, let's see how wide this is here. It's a little less than 3 inches. All right, so I'm a little shy of 3 inches in width, so that means I'm going to be a little shy of 1.5 inches to the center. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to draw a light kind of line at 1.5, like right here. Very light. And then I'm going to do another one from this side at 1.5. Right about there. Okay, so I just marked from both sides, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of draw between those two lines. That'll be my center right there. Okay, so there's my center line of the landing gear now. And what I want to do, find my protractor, and I will draw. Now I will draw the line that'll be perpendicular. All right, so those two lines now kind of will help me line up the gear on here. So I'll go like this to this line, and then I'll look at my holes and I can see my red line there. And those will go just like that. Then I'll mark those holes and we'll drill them out. You can kind of see that. Nothing special. This isn't that complicated, right? So just did that right there. Now I'll take my landing gear and I'll just put it on my line. I'll hold it snug and carefully draw my locations, carefully draw my locations of the holes. One there, one there. And I'll just hold this here. Let that one go. And those are the holes I need to drill out now. Now I'm going to carefully kind of put a little pilot starter kind of hole right here. That's close to that side. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up these T-nuts out of here. And I'm going to have to drill the hole out for this sort of outer diameter here, so I'm going to measure this. I always forget how big this is. I think it's a 1/4 inch. Let's see here. And that is, yep, 1/4 inch. So these have to be drilled out with a 1/4 inch drill bit, but I'm going to do a pilot hole first. Okay, so let's take a look inside, and I do have a little issue I wanted to bring up here. Let me pull this around and look in here. You'll notice, so there's the, hopefully you can kind of see the holes down there. Kind of hard to see them. But you'll notice that I did put these kind of reinforcement 1/4 inch pieces of balsa at the base of the fuselage, kind of where it attaches to the plate here, the landing gear plate. I did that to help reinforce it because I thought that it needed it, and I'm really close to that edge, as you can see in there. Hopefully you can kind of see. I'm really close to that edge, and I'm going to have to sort of trim that balsa, those little balsa pieces back on both sides. And the other thing is, because I am close to that edge, I'm going to have to shave off like probably one of the tabs on the T-nut. So I'm going to end up having to kind of take off, you know, if you will, kind of like one of these sides, so that I can get the T-nut up against the side of the fuselage. That's not going to hurt anything, so I'll do that now. And I do need to trim those little pieces off. So let me get in there and get that going. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and use my X-Acto blade. It has this kind of little blade. I forget what number this is, but it sort of looks like a little chisel. And I'm going to have to kind of work down here. Luckily, it's just balsa. So I'm just going to try to work with this and kind of cut out enough on both sides to make room for the T-nut at those two locations. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to do it off camera because I don't think I'll be able to get it on camera anyhow down inside there. So let me do that and I'll come back. Okay, so hopefully you can kind of see down inside there where I notched out those two little side pieces. Again, those little 1/4 inch pieces of wood were there just to kind of help support, give me a little bit more support in the landing gear plate. So those were extra, so it's not a problem kind of notching those out right there. And now what I'll do is I will now trim off, in fact, if I could draw it on here, I'm going to trim off one of these kind of tabs, and that way I can kind of stick it up against the side in there. I've modified these little T-nuts before for different when I'm putting planes together, because sometimes they just don't fit kind of the way they should, and it is difficult to trim off, you know, one of these little tabs. There's a couple ways to do it. You know, if you have a grinding wheel, you can grind it off. Like if you have like a bench mounted grinding wheel, you could probably put it in a vise and maybe cut it off with a hacksaw and then file it. That's an option. And then the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to work with it with my roto tool with this little cutting wheel on here. Any of those different methods will work. There's probably other ways of doing it. It's not easy. You got to take your time, and it does get hot, so you need to be careful. So I'm going to hold it with a pair of pliers. I'm going to hold it like this, and I'm carefully going to try to trim this off and then kind of sand it, kind of grind it down. And so this will be a little difficult, but it's possible if you have a couple of different tools like that. hopefully I can kind of fit that now. Hold on, let me get something to hold it with. How about you? Okay, so it's not all the way in there right now, but you can kind of see I have it pressed in there. But hopefully you can kind of see that in there. I'll move it around. All right. Okay, so that'll work. I'll just do the next one. All right, so now I have these two trimmed, and then I have these normal ones right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press them. It's going to be a little bit difficult to do this because they're kind of down inside there. I'm going to use my tweezers, if I can, and I'm going to put them inside here. I'm probably going to have to just do it. So I'm just going to press them in there, then I'll come back onto the camera because it's not going to be able to see. I'm going to have my hands are going to be in here and everything else. So let me go ahead and do this, and then we'll come right back. So hopefully you can kind of see down inside there, I've got all four of those guys kind of set up in there, and I pressed them in. And I actually had to trim one of the middle ones too because they were too close together. So I got them kind of lined up. I pressed them in with my thumb pressure. And what I'll do is, let me put this down here. I'm going to try to press them in a little bit deeper if I can. I got to get something. I like to use like the handle of something. I don't want to use this because I don't want to cut my hand. But I like to sort of press down a little bit on those. Again, I'm kind of getting them a little bit further before I draw them through. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the landing gear on it, and then I will draw them completely through, tighten it down from that side. But I like to press them down a little further if I can find something. Hold on a second here. Okay, so I'm just going to try to use my pliers. I'm going to put this carefully down on top of this case I have for my drill bits. And I'm just going to try to press these down a little bit more. Like that. This way I don't have to rely totally on the threads. I mean, they'll come through okay, but if I can do this, it kind of gets them going. Press them in there. All right. There they are back in there. You kind of see them. All right, let me pull these guys out of here. Find my landing gear. Okay, should be okay. Oh no. Oh, I'm gonna have to drill my landing gear out. All right, so I did have to drill these holes out a little bit more so I can get these little bolts to work. Let me start with this one over here. Oops, there we go. There like that. Hopefully things are close enough. I don't want to tighten down one as hard as I can all the way and then have it kind of torque or move a little bit the other one or something. So I'm going to be kind of gentle with it. Okay, like that. All right, so that should get me where I want to go. So now I'm going to go ahead and try to draw these in. I'll do them a little bit at a time, like I just said. Look inside real quick. getting there. Okay, they're getting close. The ones on the outside have to be done. I think the ones on the inside look like they're already down. Nice thing about something like this is you can really torque down on it because they're pretty strong, and it's a nice connection in there, or a nice kind of seats nicely because they have a big base. You know, they have a lot of area to kind of distribute the force. Okay, so hopefully I can kind of get the angle in there so you can see it. But I got those all seated in there nicely, and looks pretty good from this side here. So I'll take this off now because I gotta take these off so I can cover the plane, obviously. And like I said, I may paint these. Okay, so then the last thing I'll do is I'll probably just dab a little bit of epoxy on the edges. I don't want to get into the threads, but I'll put a little bit of epoxy on just to kind of help secure them a little further. All right, so that's going to be about it for the landing gear for right now. I will come back, as mentioned. We'll put the tail wheel bracket on later, kind of after everything's covered. But yeah, so that's it now for the landing gear. I'll pull this off and set these aside and continue on. Now I think the next step on this is to set the servo mounting blocks in this compartment in here, and we'll get those lined up and get those in, and then after that I think it's going to be time to cover it. And I do have my covering material. I'm going to go with the blue and the orange, kind of what the picture shows on the website. I'm going to just kind of stick with that, so that'll be fun. I'm looking forward to covering it. So we're moving along. All right, so that's it for now. Thanks for watching my channel. As always, I appreciate the comments, and I appreciate all you subscribers, and we'll see you next time.